First of all, it's an honor to be here with all of you. So if you haven't heard of Perplexity, at a very high level, it's a chatbot, if you will. So it's like ChatGPT. We partner with OpenAI, but also Anthropic, Meta, XAI, and others. So we are LLM agnostic. OpenAI uses their own models, so does Claude, Meta, etc. We basically partner with all of the latest model providers, and we have a platform that sits on top of them. So when a user asks questions, we then route those questions to the right model under the hood. And that makes our responses really powerful because we're choosing the best model for the response. Another difference is that we are trying to access as much data as possible. So we integrated with a company called FactSet, like a Bloomberg competitor. Finance is one of our biggest use cases. But we just are integrating with a company called Wiley. If you're familiar with Wiley, they're a national publication of academic information. And so we are partnering with them. Users will be able to query for Wiley information or ask questions and get sources or information from Wiley very soon. So data access is really important to us, and we're going to continue to add data sources to Perplexity. The last thing I'll say is that we are a search company first and foremost. So where Anthropic and OpenAI are focused on building models, our job is to find the right information wherever it lives, on the internet, in somebody's own files, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF, or like a Wiley, a data access provider, find that information and use it to answer questions for our users.
So in essence, how many of you have used Perplexity, by the way? Okay, so, and how many of you have used ChatGPT? Okay, so if I'm doing a, say, image creation, some of the models are better than others. If I'm doing programming, many of our programmers would say that Anthropic is the best. People could have their different, but so when someone makes a query using Perplexity, you then route them, or the user can also choose which model as well. So you could actually access ChatGPT through Perplexity for a certain number of searches every day.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I would say our difference is that we were founded as a research or a search company first. And so again, our goal is to first and foremost find the right information, but help answer questions in a fact-based, accurate way.
So what is the, you've been in startups, Angela came out of startups. What's the culture like there?
Yeah.
You know, are you the oldest person at Perplexity? Do you feel like everybody around you is very immature and they're just out of college, or what's the culture like?
Yeah, it was funny. So I've been managing startups and with startups for about 10 years. I joined Perplexity last year, and I was looked at as the seasoned person at the company, or one of the seasoned folks at the company, which was nice, but I was also a little, it was a new feeling. So, but the culture is very AI driven. What was fascinating to me is kind of behind the scenes, a lot of our processes, our R&D, our systems are run on AI. And so there's a lot less need for a lot of big teams because of that. So we're using AI to continue to improve our own, again, systems, processes, that kind of thing. And I would say too, it's a culture where our founders ask us, if you have a question, ask Perplexity first before going to somebody else. We have a big knowledge base of information that we have stored in Perplexity, and so our users, or not our users, our employees, can ask questions there first. So it's really hard driving. I have never worked this hard in my life. My parents were like, "Are you good?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." But it's been very exciting. But yeah, I'd say we're AI first, and we're seeing a lot of other companies kind of move that way as well.
Okay, and you're in charge of enterprise growth, so you're working with large clients, and I guess NVIDIA is actually your largest client. And so how does your product for an enterprise differ than a product if someone here just signs up for it?
Sure. So the consumer side is all about kind of individual user using Perplexity, right? Enterprise then is about more than one user. And so the way to think about it is, as an enterprise, you can sign up. You get additional security functionality. We're just SOC 2 Type 2 certified for those that know that matters. So there's more security kind of functionality. one thing really important for enterprise users is that Perplexity and our partners, OpenAI, Anthropic, and others, cannot train on any data that users have. Questions, prompts, information that they've uploaded, that kind of thing. So those are ironclad agreements that enterprises have. Universities are the same thing. So Texas A&M, very important for them and others to say, hey, I don't want you accessing our students' information. That's why they're a enterprise user. And then collaboration. So it's really easy as an enterprise to create spaces. If you use Perplexity, a space is kind of a place where you can create like a custom model, upload information. You can then invite collaborators to that space and work on projects there. So for universities, what we've talked about is creating spaces for all the students at the university. It might be a space where you upload information about upcoming events or a student handbook, or classes could have spaces where you have students interacting in a space with certain information, files that the teacher has uploaded, links to certain websites, and interacting there as well. So again, enterprise, easier to collaborate with others.
So for example, our senior associate dean and his team took our faculty manual, all of our tenure guidelines, our promotion guidelines, everything about how you submit expenses, how you access research funds, put it into a Perplexity space so that a faculty member or staff, instead of saying, where do I find this information on the website, can just go to the Perplexity space and say, all right, the dean is being very difficult. How do I get money out of him for this trip? Or what are the rules? And we've uploaded all that material and it's proprietary, so nobody else gets it. And then, the other question we got from our faculty when they uploaded materials for their classes is, I don't want anybody else to see my IP. This is my class, I created it. I don't want even my colleagues to see it. And it's all confidential, it's all private, they control it. So that's, what are some of the most interesting use cases that enterprise clients are using Perplexity for today?
Yeah, so again, research was kind of the primary use case that we started with. Where things are getting really interesting is when companies are uploading their own information or syncing their own files and data, right? So for example, we're working with finance clients who are uploading all of their historical research and then asking Perplexity to analyze that research and go find new investment opportunities that are maybe popping up online. We also have sales and marketing teams who are using Perplexity to go prospect for new clients. And it's really easy to add a prompt into a space and have it kind of be custom information that you want. So I'll just give you an example. Before I walk into a meeting with anyone, I have a space where I just say a person's name or a company. Perplexity then goes off and finds information about that company or that person and puts it into basically a template that I want it to be in, ready for my meeting.
So you have a template where you have all the questions you ask. Tell me about the organization, tell me about the institution, where did the person that I'm meeting with go to school, what was his or her background, what questions should I ask? You have all of that preloaded into
Yes.
and then you just put the name in and it
I even have a part of it that says, give me examples of questions that this company might want to ask Perplexity. And then I'm ready for that meeting. All I have to do is enter in the name of the company or the person. So that's kind of on the enterprise side. For universities, what we're seeing is, again, there's kind of the operations piece of it where students might have access to, or faculty have access to information that they're asking about. But there's the actual education piece where teachers are uploading maybe educational guides, that kind of thing for their students to interact with. But they're asking their students to create spaces and work on projects within those spaces for class.
Okay. And so, I mean, we have partnered with you for the business school, not for AU overall. Texas A&M, University of Maine. So how do these contracts work?
Yeah.
How much do you charge? Is it a per license or is it a per enterprise? How does it work?
Yeah. So the directive that I've gotten from our leadership is we want users, we want usage. And so the way it works is we have a bottoms-up approach where we've gone to campuses and had students just downloading Perplexity on an individual basis. And now we're working on
Is
kind
the
of a
free version or the paid version?
paid version.
Okay.
But we actually had a competition last year, at the start of the fall last year, where we had campuses, and if 1,000 students signed up for Perplexity, the entire campus got free Pro for the year.
Okay.
We had about 50 campuses where that happened.
Yeah.
So now we're doing a top-down approach, though, working with universities to roll out Perplexity. Really easy. It's essentially a license for your entire university to use Perplexity, and this is the enterprise version. And again, we want usage, so it's pretty heavily discounted. You just buy a license, and then we work with you to roll out Perplexity to your entire university. So Texas A&M was our first kind of anchor client there. They're rolling out in phases, and then a big rollout in the fall of this year. And right now they have about 30,000 students who are on the platform.
Got it, okay. It seems like every week each of the companies is rolling out something new. OpenAI, Perplexity. Tell us kind of where the products are today, and then where will they be in a year or 2 years?
Sure, yeah. So right now, AI is really good at ingesting a lot of information, summarizing, asking questions, helping you with that kind of thing. You've probably all heard of agentic this year, big word, just means AI doing something for you. We're also looking at this space. We have a browser that we're working on that we're going to come out with, which we can talk about more. But with agentic, I'll give you a use case that I'm really excited about. Travel. What we're doing is you're going to be able to say, hey, I'm traveling to Paris, and I want to stay in this kind of hotel. I'm interested in this food. And then Perplexity will go off and book your hotel, your airline, and suggest restaurants for you that you can also book as well.
Will it ask you first, or it just charges your credit card?
Whatever you want. You can say, yeah. probably should ask you first.
Okay.
Unless it knows that I want,
Okay.
something specific. But we're also looking at hotel brands adding your loyalty number into Perplexity, so it kind of knows your history of where you like to stay, for example. So agentic is going to be a word you continue to hear a lot, but I think it's actually going to be really powerful in terms of what AI can do for you. The other one is personalization. So learning, here's my likes, my dislikes, my questions, my history, and then suggesting either new use cases, information that you want, pushing information to you. Let's say you want to follow some certain news topic. You could say, every week I want a customized news alert on these topics. Great, that'll be pushed to you. So personalizing your experience is another place that we're headed.
And you have a new voice version of Perplexity, which I guess is actually technically doing better than Siri in terms of, can you tell us a little about what's...
Yeah. I just showed my mom this last week. So we have an app on your phone. So I use mostly on my computer, but we have an app on your phone you can use as well, Android and iOS. And we just came out last week with an update to our iOS app where you can use your voice and ask your Perplexity app to do things for you on your phone. So the example that I was showing my mom was booking a Uber ride. She was at home, and I said, just ask Perplexity to book your Uber to someplace. You have to then allow the Perplexity app pops up, hey, can I access Uber? Great. But then it'll kind of, it will create the ride for you. You have to then press go, or right. So you can do that. We are integrated with iPhone Calendar, or Apple Calendar, and Apple Maps. I use Google Maps and Gmail, so soon we'll be integrated with them as well, and you can ask your phone through the app to do things like send emails, schedule invites, that kind of thing.
Okay, so right now we're kind of, AI is a collaborator. Soon it will be, and this was in Casey's presentation, AI will be an agent. And then what comes after that?
After that, it's hard to say.
Okay.
I think, so I do know what after that is, potentially. So first it's a collaborator today, then it's going to be kind of an agent, more kind of like an assistant for you, doing things for you on your behalf. I think where it's going to head then, particularly in the research space, is going off and right now it's gathering information and creating summaries and inferences. It's not really coming up with new ideas. And so I think the next frontier is having AI go off, ingest a ton of information, and then it spends a day thinking through and then coming up with new ideas. That's where, and that's very hard because it's not the autocomplete or the word complete that we're used to today, right? Right now, AI is essentially taking probability and saying, what's the next word that should come based on my understanding? This is a different model. It's understanding what information it has, but then coming up with something new.
Okay. And most of us in the room are older than you, and we have learned to basically go to Google. So is Google or traditional search gonna die a slow death? And what's the future of kind of searching through Perplexity or ChatGPT versus searching with traditional search engines?
Great question. I think Google, as we use it today, or as we're used to using it, is going to die a slow death. And the reason is, if you go to Google today and you type in, a question or a prompt, you're going to get some sponsored links at the top. You're then going to get a bunch of links that you have to click through. And once you have this new way of searching, it's just not very, it's not very well, it's not a great experience.
Okay.
That being said, Google, knows this, and they have those AI prompts at the top where you can then, they're kind of doing a little bit the same thing, summarizing, giving answers. I think the real question is going to be all of the sponsored links, all the information that people are paying for to try and get their themselves to be prominent. What happens there? Companies come to us all the time and say, how can we get our information to show up in your responses? And the answer is, essentially you have to be able to have your information out in the public, but it's important for the information to be seen by people as credible. And so one of the places that we pull out information from is national, international publications, all publicly available, not behind paywalls, and then summarizing that information for users. So yeah, I think the way that we search is changing, but companies are going to figure out ways to then ingest the right information for users into it.
Right, this is one of the biggest challenges that all of us are going to have because, we all have a website. We have students come to look at the website. We have prospective faculty come to look at the website. We have spent years and lots of money perfecting the way we project ourselves to the world, but pretty soon, that's not going to be relevant. So all this money and time we've put into, it's basically, all right, tell us about, Middle Tennessee State or University of Illinois, and what are the pros and cons of going to University of Illinois versus University of Michigan, and they're going to get that information from Perplexity or ChatGPT. So that raises questions about how does our information train the LLM to project us in a positive way?
Yeah, you said it's not going to be relevant. I actually am going to challenge that a little bit. So all the work that we've put into information online is still going to be relevant, and the reason is that Perplexity and others are citing those sources.
Okay.
So we're still pulling information from those sources. I think what's going to be important is how is that information displayed? Do you have a website with all that information? Do you have a repository where it's a data repository where Perplexity and others are pulling that information in? Keeping that information up to date is going to be really important. Okay. The question is just in what where, I guess, where and what capability. Yeah.
Now, are you going to come out with a specific product for the education space, or what are you thinking on that?
Yes, I am pushing for this behind the scenes.
Okay.
I really want this. Yeah. So right now it's the pro version for students, individually, and the enterprise version for again that top-down approach. I'm pushing for a Perplexity education application that is geared towards students and faculty in schools. I want to say it'll be ready for the fall. It's hard to say, but that would have certain functionality or features for research, education. I know I heard before I came in about questions around maybe students using AI in the wrong ways, or how do I help grade material and that kind of thing. And I think we have to design AI that takes all that into account. Today it's a little bit of the Wild West, but that's going to be really important because everyone that I talk to who's in school today, I say use AI. You've got to use AI because when you get to these companies, they are going to expect you to be able to know how to use AI, and those that do it really well will succeed, and those that don't, they're just going to be behind.
Got it. This concept of artificial general intelligence, where basically machines will have the equivalent or better thinking than humans, how far away are we from that?
Yeah, I don't even want, that's not my space.
Okay.
I'm not a researcher in AI, so I'll just say that I have been both so amazed at the progress that AI and Perplexity and others have made in the last 2 years, but there is so much to go from that to AGI or whatever you want to define that as. So
Okay.
I think we're probably further away than we think we are.
Okay.
But it's hard to say.
And here's my last question, then we'll open up. If you look at the development of companies like Perplexity, ChatGPT, how does the pace of adoption or pace of growth for companies like you, ChatGPT, compared to the pace of development for Google, Facebook, Amazon? Is it 5 times? It's much faster, but how do you compare them?
Yeah. So this is a fascinating question. It took Google, Microsoft, Amazon time to build the foundation, but once they had a certain size, they exploded, right? It's taken us in OpenAI a lot less time, but the flip side of that is, this is something that we talk about a lot, is that there is in AI, there isn't a lot of moat right now, differentiation. It's really, not really easy, but it's easier for companies to come along and create a similar product. And so the question is going to be, and I think in AI, you mentioned valuations. I think this year we're still in the hype cycle of going up. I think there's probably going to be some pain and consolidation in 2026, as a lot of companies that have raised money and who are trying to differentiate don't do a good job of that, and they're going to be either go to business or get swallowed up. But the scale is faster than anything we've seen, but that differentiator, that moat, is harder and harder to build.
Right.
And so you might see companies go up, and you might see them come back down.
Right. Okay.
But the pace is unlike anything we've seen before.
Okay. So we're going to open it up. Maybe just identify yourself and your university and ask anything you want. Let's start back here.
I'm curious about this.
And your name is and your...
Sorry, I missed the instructions. I'm Marquetta Wrigley, University of North Carolina in Greensboro. I'm curious about the spaces. Can you help me understand the difference between your spaces and my GPT or what Notebook LM has with their bounded workspace? That would interest me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a.
Did you all hear the question? Yep. Okay.
So Spaces is a feature that we have, and you have kind of the main Perplexity page. It says Ask Anything, and then there's a button on the left where you can create spaces. Spaces are a similar concept to like a Notebook LLM. The idea is that you can, in a space, you can upload your own documents. So a space, right now the limit is 5,000 documents. You can sync your Gmail, your G Drive or your SharePoint. Really easy to keep things up to date. You can then add links. So you say, I only want Perplexity to focus, or the space, to focus on whitehouse.gov, which might have all the executive orders, and some national publications. And then you upload your own information. And then in a space, you can have a custom prompt. Something like, what I tell people is, give it a personality. So I'm a top researcher. I care about these things. I want my response to be kind of in this template. And then within that space, you can invite others and really collaborate on that. So it's for specific projects, tasks, repeatable things. Again, a similar type of concept to Notebook LLM, but we think we're adding the most data into that space possible to then give the best responses.
Hi, I'm Lakshmi Iyer, also from UNC Greensboro. Thank you very much for those insights. Can you talk a little bit about AI hallucination? And I know with ChatGPT, we've had a number of those occurrences. And with Perplexity, at least based on some things I've read, it's usually pretty good, but there are cases where that's happened. So what do we do in that space?
Yeah.
Especially if you're using it for research or other purposes. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Hallucinations are are still an issue. Kind of depends on how you use it. So hallucinations are more of an issue when you're using a base model like a ChatGPT that's not connected to the internet, because there's a cutoff date on the training that they're doing. So they might say, okay, for this model, we're only using data up until 3 months ago. They have to cut it off and then create the model. Hallucinations happen when the model has that cutoff date and gets asked about questions that might relate to something that happened recently, or that they don't have in their training data. So those base models can hallucinate more often. It actually can be a good thing, because if you're doing something creative, you want the model to hallucinate a little bit. So we say that for us, or for certain use cases, hallucinations are a feature. For us, they're a bug. And so one way we do that is that we're connected to the live web, so we have up-to-date information, and then we have to cite our sources, kind of as I mentioned before. So if you're worried about hallucinations, I would say we cite our sources. Make sure you go to the primary source and see if you agree with that source, what you think of that source, the quality, that kind of thing. I think we'll continue to have hallucinations on a smaller scale, but that's kind of how we think about it.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Tom Kushner from Endicott College outside of Boston. Thank you. There's a lot of consternation about all these different tools and what you should bet on. And I'm just wondering if that's really relevant, because I'm not sure how much switching costs really are if I choose a tool that turns out not to be around in the next 2 years. By the way, before you got up there, I asked Perplexity about the strengths and weaknesses of various AI tools, and your system said about Perplexity, high initial setup costs. So you might want to check that out.
Depends on the enterprise, but yeah, maybe I'll talk to our engineers about that.
So I'm just wondering, like.
That's maybe a hallucination. But
But
Yeah.
I think people are reticent to make a move because they feel like, hey, let's see how it unfolds. And I'm just wondering, does it really matter to see how it unfolds? Because, or does it really matter who to go with and where it goes?
Yeah, that gets a bit to my answer around creating a moat. And you're right, there is right now differentiation, but there's not massive differentiation. What I would say is that there are different tools in your AI tool belt, or toolkit, to use for different things. So for research, I still think Perplexity is the best tool out there. I think for creative writing, like if you want to write emails or you want help with creative writing, that kind of thing, creative activities, a ChatGPT or a Claude, probably better. Image generation, OpenAI just came out with their latest model, which is amazing. Perplexity does not do image generation very well, so don't do it. Don't use it. Cursor is an amazing tool for engineering. So that use case, engineering, development, Cursor, great. What I would say is experiment with different tools depending on your use cases. Whichever one you like, stick with it. But if you hear of people who are saying, I really like this tool, just go check it out. Because there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening. I agree with you though, in a year or 2 years, 50% or more of what you see today is going to be gone. But that's why I think you experiment, stick with what you like, try new things. But you're right, switching costs are low today. So I always just say, like, experiment and pick the tools that you want for different use cases.
So can you talk?
And you are.
Oh, I'm Gloria from Indiana University in Kokomo. So to talk about the research, can you expand on your relationship with Wiley and then the access to journals that are PIRs behind paywalls? I mean, what type of problems do you see that creating? Are researchers going to gravitate more to the open access journal? I don't know. Can you
Yeah,
expand
no,
on
it's a-
that and where you see that going in the next year or two, and
Yeah.
what we need to do as researchers?
And I think Guan Ho, your session is going to cover some of this too? Not so much, okay. Okay.
All right, well, I'll take the next hour then to cover it myself. No, this is a really good topic. So Perplexity has access to 3 different types of data. The first is publicly available information on the web. So if it's behind a paywall, we can't access it. We do have what's called a Publisher Partners Program, where we have now 50 publishers who we are partnered with. We then pay them a fee to get access to their information behind a paywall, but then also we're sending those sources, or people who click on those sources, back to them. So they're getting a source of new subscribers basically that way as well. So that's one way that we access information. The second are these private data sets like Wiley. So for FactSet, again, a Bloomberg competitor, if you're a subscriber already to FactSet, then if you log into FactSet in Perplexity, we can pull that information in that way. With Wiley, we're integrating with their massive data set. And so what you'll be able to do is say, for this question, I want to turn off Wiley, and I only want the latest information from the web. Or this question, I want to turn on Wiley and turn off the web and see what I can find there because I trust that source better. And so much like models, you can choose which one you want to use. Data sources are the same way. I really want to choose this data set or this data source for this type of question or query that I trust. For us, it's going to be about getting access to the best information wherever it lives, and then letting the user choose either I want this information or letting the AI choose, I think this is the right information for this question. But it's that's one thing that we continue to think about is what's our data strategy and how do we make sure it's all the best for the user.
And I think the next phase will be, like at AU, our library controls. And so our library will work with Perplexity to give information on which publications we have access to, and then we can give single sign-on passwords and get access to that so that it's part of the search.
Yeah, because I was thinking of that. I have access to certain journals
Right.
behind paywalls, so
Yes.
how can that be integrated
Right.
with Perplexity
So they will-
to kind of streamline my
Right.
searches?
Right.
Yeah, if it's behind a paywall, then you can't bring that in. But I will mention just one thing really quickly. Perplexity has 3 different kinds of models. We have our standard model that you use for most of your questions. We have what's called a reasoning model. So if you remember DeepSeek was in the news a while back from China model, it actually performs really well. So it's open source. We took that model, we actually cut it off from China. We broke it out, so essentially now if you ask our DeepSeek version about Tiananmen Square, it actually responds in that way. But reasoning model allows you to see the chain of thought behind the model, and it handles complicated multi-step questions really well. And then there's our deep research, which takes 3 to 5 minutes to complete, gets really deep on a subject. And so again, with research, it's also what kind of model you want to use. Is this a deep research model, a reasoning model, or I just want to know the date from some historical event? That would be the basic one.
Over here, first, yeah. And just identify yourself. Yeah.
I'm Anthony from Toronto Metropolitan University in Canada. I just wanted to sort of introduce a forward-thinking question. And one of the things you talked about earlier was about personalization. And with the introduction of agentic AI in the future, we're going to have access to all these great opportunities where it'll do stuff for us and we don't really need to think about it. I guess one of the things I wanted to raise around that, and interested in your thoughts on that, is part of the challenge we have today with basic search is privacy, and people are concerned about sharing stuff with the internet because they're concerned about their privacy. Any thoughts as to sort of whether or not privacy issues are going to play a role in terms of the adoption of agentic AI in the future, and whether you think that's going to be a problem?
Yeah, great question. I think that there are always going to be privacy concerns. What I can only speak to what we're trying to do, and certainly on the enterprise and the consumer side, we're trying to give the user a lot of choice about what they can and can't do, what the AI can and can't do. And that choice is going to be really important as we go on, as we move forward into agentic kind of workflows. I think your question, though, to me speaks to what is publicly available on the web and what is being pulled in by this AI and then served as part of a response. I think that there are going to be privacy concerns around data access and what's available. And this is why, I think it's really important to also have regulation around AI that we have not gotten to yet. It's something that we will continue to think about and work on. It's a great question that I think it's going to take some time to play out.
Yes, right behind. Yep.
I'm Ian from Saginaw Valley State University in Michigan. My question is kind of related with what he just asked. At very basic, how secure would my data be if I upload it on Perplexity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So security really important for us. For enterprise users, your data is private and secure to you. So we have ironclad agreements with OpenAI, Anthropic, these other model providers. Perplexity and those model providers can't access enterprise data and use it for training of models or really for any other purpose. We work with a lot of big banks and law firms, and they are incredibly particular about how their data is handled. From that sense, incredibly secure. Now, different than a free user who's just using the basic model of Perplexity or version of Perplexity, right? That we use to help us train our own responses, do kind of perform quality analysis, that kind of thing. But certainly if you're an enterprise user, security is paramount.
We have time for 2 more questions. Go ahead.
Since you're right there. Hi, my name is Laurel Lane, and I am from Metropolitan State University of Denver. And I'm curious if, in your own evaluation of usage, if you're looking at any cohorts and how they're using and the kind of outputs they prefer, and if that's influencing how y'all continue to refine the product. I was thinking about, since you're the senior person in your company, if you're seeing, anecdotally, the younger, employees prefer information in a certain way. And then I was also thinking about all of us that are of different ages. And of course, not about age, but behaviors and patterns. And if y'all have kind of gone down that path to try to see how that influences Perplexity going forward.
Yeah. So there is responses that are research-based responses. And I think we've done a lot of work in terms of how to structure the response. So, at the top, kind of summary, a lot of information. We do a lot of like headings or graphs or that kind of thing. And then a summary, kind of a summary at the bottom to kind of then respond to or summarize the information, right? So we do a lot of work on research and how does that response want to be presented. I think another question is researching like buying behavior. So one of the things that we're seeing now is not just what's the best shoe for running. It's what's the best shoe for a new marathon runner who has a race in 2 months that'll be running in this type of environment. And if you type that into Google, you're going to get who knows what. But with Perplexity and others, we can pull from online research and online testimonials who say, okay, this shoe is amazing for this, and then give a response that is really customized to that question to you. And we're seeing the younger generation who is very specific and particular about what they're looking for, appreciate kind of all the work being done for them essentially on the research front, and then giving a summarized view of what they, of the response. Now that being said, it's gonna be 80% of the way there, right? You should still go and look for yourself, but it's that hyper customization and personalization that we're seeing really show up, not just in shopping, but in other areas, but that's the example that came to mind.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool, makes sense.
Okay, and there was one more. Nope.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah, see, yep.
Sorry to ask too, but could you just talk a little bit about spaces? You mentioned A&M. Obviously, you do a lot of work with AU. Talk about the types of spaces that colleges and universities are using. I'm sitting here getting emails from students that have double booked their finals next week. Like, I don't need to answer these questions, and I would imagine things like spaces could really.
Yeah, so there are kind of the spaces that students could use, and I would think of a space for a student as I'm working on a certain project, maybe a paper, and I would put in a lot of information in that space to help me organize that information, summarize it, that kind of thing. I think universities are using spaces, and maybe you can speak to some of that, but are using it for, again, helping to organize information for their teachers or their faculty. I've seen spaces being used to help organize events. So you might pull in information from past events, maybe a flyer, that kind of thing, a template, and then say, okay, Perplexity, create a new template or a new flyer based on the old one, the same format, but new information based on the new events. So there's like operational ways to use spaces and then research ways to use spaces. I don't know if you have any.
So we are, I mean, and I would say, again, consistent with my colleagues, we're making this up as we go along. It's all so new. So I would say in the last 3 to 4 weeks, we have created spaces, faculty have created spaces in different classes, okay? So they upload, did you already talk about this or no? They upload their syllabus, their readings, previous tests, their study guides. You know, some of our faculty are uploading hundreds of documents. A student can then say, I just met with a student who's interviewing for an internship. He said, I'm really having a hard time with intermediate accounting. So he went to Perplexity and basically created a study guide for himself using the faculty members' materials, previous tests. Tell me about this concept, give me sample questions, give me some practice exam questions, et cetera. So that's for academic use. We're creating, I mentioned the space we're creating for our faculty manual, tenure, promotion, the deans being a pain, all those questions that faculty ask all the time. Then our student affairs function, how do you create a club? How do I get an event on the calendar? How do I get money? How do I reserve a room? All that information is created in space. We have encouraged, and I'm not sure how far along there are, but our admissions office, graduate admissions is done at the school level, undergraduate admissions is done at the central level. For grad admissions, 80% of the questions we get are the same questions over and over again. What kind of grades and GMAT or GREs? How much financial aid is available? How many credits do I need to take? What's the sequence? So our admissions office is creating a space for applicants that reduces them answering the same rote question over and over again and allows them to have higher value engagement with students to sell the university. Because in my view, admissions officers need to move from being, this is a sports analogy, from being a catcher to being a pitcher. Like, you know, the model is you're privileged to apply to our school, and if you meet the standards, you can come. We need to change. So, and then our academic advising is creating a space to upload the curricular requirements so that, you know, if a student, my son, will ask, weird hours, like 3 in the morning, what classes do I need to take next semester? I have to register by noon tomorrow. An academic advisor is not available at 3 in the morning. So all that information will be up there. And so we're creating spaces for everything we do, and it's creating incredible efficiencies. This is like in the last 3 weeks, so we're, you know, in the first inning. So.
You could upload your, or you could, so very soon you'll be able to connect your Outlook in your Gmail, and it'll then be able to look at the responses you've given before. If you have a new email that's come in, then it can write that response for you. There's actually a tool. Yeah, that's going to get. Email's going to get a lot better. Yeah, there's actually a tool today that does this really well, called Fixer.ai. I think it's Fyxer. It's a plug-in to your email, and it helps with that a lot. But yeah, I think email is an easy place where you'll see a lot of change soon.
So we are going to break for lunch. Thank you for being here. Thank you for flying in. I hope you get a valuation that's a lot higher than what's reported in the press, and really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.